Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
Mm-hmm.
And we have lots of
Will that be
individuals who know how to go around computer
around? Yeah,
programs.
but will that? I mean, with the adoption of this internet treaty, will that make this acts punishable under the law or the penalized?
Yes,
Fined?
under the present bill, it will make acts of circumvention or acts of violation of these technological measures
Criminal.
as well. In some countries, they make it a criminal act. The proposal here in this specific treaty is that it be made an aggravating circumstance to the crime of copyright infringement. Of course, it's not really written in stone as yet. No? There could still be debates on this matter because there are some sectors who really want that it be criminalized.
Mhm. Just for everyone's information, the Intellectual Property Office is like a register of deeds. It has a register for trademarks and for patents, but it has no registry for copyrighted works. Is that correct?
Well, actually, the registry for copyrighted works, in accordance with the IP code, the Intellectual Property Code, is the National Library. So they are what we call the depositary or the copyright registry for all literary and artistic works. However, may I inform your listeners that this afternoon, our office, the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines, will sign a memorandum of agreement with the National Library, where the National Library will deputize our agency to become a
Warehouse.
receiving, not really a warehouse, but a receiving office. So every time, for example, a writer would want to deposit his work with IPO, it's just like you're depositing with the National Library.
Okay.
And
So-
because IPO has nationwide reach, so the writers from all other parts of the Philippines can readily deposit their works.
And just for everyone's information, when we were negotiating for this show with Ramon Jacinto, they volunteered that musicians can record their works here, and they can also act as a storage of sorts. And I mean, maybe it's something that we can work on together in
That's
the
right,
future
yes.
after this.
But
National
in fact,
Library.
our office is planning to come up with a sort of I call it mega database of
Database.
all copyrighted
So
works.
what you're going to be storing, I mean, with the copyright amendment bill, there's going to be a Bureau of Copyright within the IPO.
Yes, that's right. We will include the Bureau of Copyright within the Intellectual Property Office, which its main function is really to take care of the copyright sector because really nobody
Because
takes care of it.
there's no.
We have a copyright division at the National Library, but their work is merely that of registry. They don't really do any substantial legislative or policy making.
And besides,
efforts.
under the law and also in international law, there is no need for authors or artists to register their works. The
Well,
moment
yes,
they
yes,
create it, they
that's right.
own copyright over the
in
work.
accordance with the Mother Treaty, which is known
The
as the
Berne
Berne Convention, literary and artistic works for it to be copyrighted, it doesn't need any formality. So the protection accrues, if I'm using a legal term, at the moment or by the sole fact of creation. So long as your work is original, meaning it has not been copied from a previous work, it is the original expression of what's inside your mind, of your idea, then it's already copyright protected.
Okay.
It's now up to the other person, whoever is challenging the originality, to prove otherwise.
Okay.
That you're the one who created that work.
Or that your work is not original and so therefore not copyright protected.
Because that's also the issue sometimes with artists. They accuse each other of copying.
Yes, that's
I
right.
mean, and it's hard to prove, right? I mean, how do you know that I'm the first to create and you're the first to
Or
create this
is it-
particular line?
Is it just because, like, if your book is copyrighted, is that among the two, let's say both are accusing each other of copying each other's work, who would you side with? Do you side with somebody who's just legally copyrighted, or is that the person in the right? Meaning it doesn't really matter who started it or
actually,
not.
you can prove copyright ownership in many ways. Well, I think the easiest one would be to make a deposit of 2 copies of your work with the National Library.
But is it customary for writers or artists in the Philippines? I don't think
The
many
law
people
doesn't
know.
require.
It doesn't
The law doesn't require
That's why many
copyright
people don't do
deposit
it.
and registration. But our office highly recommends making a deposit of your copyrighted
For
works
purposes
for
of
purposes of, in
proving
the
that
event
you're
of
first.
future disputes or litigation.
Skirmishes.
You can show something tangible before
That's
the
what
judge.
I was saying. It's
Yeah.
like it doesn't really matter who is the original creator. Of course, it matters between us. Of course, it matters. But what would be more recognized? Somebody without a copyright or somebody with a
Yes,
copyright?
there is a legal presumption if ever you are in possession of a certificate of registration
Yes.
from the National Library.
Yes.
There is a legal presumption that you are the copyright owner.
Right, right.
But of course, that legal presumption can also be overcome by other means of evidence, like
Okay.
if there's testimonial evidence that would say,
Yeah, I
that
created it
indeed,
first.
that-
I wrote that
Yeah.
first.
yeah, and that I witnessed this person writing this and
Yeah.
even sent it to me.
Because we have that a lot
Yes,
kasi
or-
in the writing world.
Yes, but then among writers, we haven't walang ganyang kaso masyado eh. You know why? Because writers won't litigate on their
Yeah.
copyrights.
Yeah.
We would just accuse each other of
Yeah.
doing it and then work on destroying the other person's credibility and reputation.
But that happens a lot.
Nobody would litigate. I only had one experience with copyright. We made an anthology in Ateneo,
Yeah.
supposedly for a textbook. And for the first time ever, I heard of a writer who wanted to enforce his copyright.
Really?
My other co-editors weren't happy about it, but secretly, I was in law school then.
Yeah.
I was quite
Yeah,
proud
yeah.
that he did it because many of us have poems or stories
Yeah.
published in textbooks.
Yes.
We never even get paid for it. And you know
Yes.
how much we receive for being anthologized? 1,000.
Yeah, if you're lucky.
If you're lucky, 500 pesos or sometimes a complimentary copy.
Yes.
So all we're asking is that we're informed. We
Yeah.
be informed that
That
our
you-
work is appearing there. In fact, for example, me, I'll be so happy to distribute my works
Yeah.
to everybody who would care to publish it.
Which is
but
20
inform me.
people.
Let me know that it's a reputable
Yes,
publication.
yes.
Let me know that it's not being used for profit because
Yes.
the problem is publishers profit from it, but the writers
Writers themselves.
Yeah,
They
they're
don't.
not paid, and it seems to be the custom in the industry
Yes.
that even if, for example, I put together a book of poems and then I get your poem, and nobody informs you that I'm actually reproducing your works in a new book, and worse, not paying you for the reproduction. So it seems to be an industry
Yes.
practice.
And the sad thing is, when this writer went to enforce his copyright and threatened us with a lawsuit, the other writers perceived him to be gahaman and greedy because he's not, he doesn't want to share his work. But you know what? Writers should be compensated for their works too, not
Yes.
only for commissioned works, but also for our literary works. We're so used to poetry readings,
Yes.
to so many
Yes.
affairs, so many events where writers don't even get free lunch. Literally free lunch lang ha. Just a meal. We don't get it.
So
there has been a-
writers know your rights.
Yes,
Oh,
that's
Know your
right.
rights.
Writers
Yes.
know your rights.
And
talaga.
and you have a bundle of rights. First of all, the right to be attributed and recognized for
Yes.
what you wrote, and not to be copied or distorted.
Yes.
And and second of all, to be compensated for anything or any venture that will commercially profit from the publication of your
Yes.
work.
Very few writers here in the Philippines, or literary writers at that, are compensated for their literary works. Many writers earn from doing other things,
Right.
other writings that are not
Everybody has a
necessarily
day job.
literary.
Well,
Yes.
That's true. That's
People
true.
do corporate writing, etc. Because you really don't get anything from your literature. So
That's right. So
It
I think
really is a noble job.
it really,
it's
really is.
and it's about time that changes. Attorney Louie of the IPO.
Well, in fact, the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines has been trying to reach out to the different sectors relying on copyright for protection. And in the recent years, we have dealt with many writers, with the writers union like
Umpil?
Umpil.
Yes, yes.
Yes, and Lira, and all the other writers groups. And in fact, our office has helped establish or endorse the establishment of what we call a collective management organization for authors and publishers. So the trend nowadays in the entire world is to collectively manage your copyright. So you don't manage copyright on your own as individuals, but you group together and try to negotiate better terms rates of royalties from users of your copyrighted work.
It's
So
like
right
having
now,
managers.
that's right.
Manager for
the one who will take up the cudgels for you, so you will concentrate on your writing, no, on doing what you do best. Now, well, we have PhilCalls, the Filipinas Copyright Licensing Society, and they are now licensing different institutes of higher education, institutions who are using the copyrighted works of their members, compiling them like what they call course packs, having it used in the different colleges. So they try to license them. So in that way, they get paid, they get acknowledged.
Right, that's a very good effort. Right now, we're going to pause for BBC News break. Please stay tuned.
We now return to Piracy Watch on DZRJ 810 AM, the voice of the Philippines. Here is your host, Sarah Jane Seguitan.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Piracy Watch. I'm with Jing, Mookie, and Attorney Louie of the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines. Just before the break, we were talking about, aside from the creative process, the fact that in the industry, writers get to be republished but not acknowledged or paid for their work, for the reproduction of their works. And Attorney Louie was saying that the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines is moving towards amendments in the copyright law such that there will be a Bureau of Copyright, a third-party concerned, a regulatory agency within the government, of course, to watch out for these kinds of gray areas among literary artists in particular. Attorney Louie, what other amendments is the IPOPhil pushing for in your legislative agenda?
Well, another one would be IPO would accredit all the collective management organizations, which are organizations enforcing collectively the copyright of their members, usually writers or musicians. So there have already been several CMOs that have cropped up in the recent years. So government now has to step in so that there would be no confusion that would be created among users of copyrighted works.
Collective management organizations act as managers on behalf
Yes,
of
they manage the economic rights of the authors on behalf of their members who are authors.
So they're the ones who collect royalties
That's
and
right,
watch
yes.
out when
They're the ones
the
who-
works appear.
That's right. They're the ones who negotiate with the entities who use copyrighted works on regarding the rights or regarding the rate of royalty.
How come the government is stepping in the accreditation? Is there competition among established CMOs?
Well, not really competition, but sometimes a confusion is created in some of the establishments. Like, for example, a certain restaurant or chain of restaurants is already paying for the music that it plays to a certain collective management organization composed of music composers. Then another collective management organization comes in and collects also certain rights related to copyright. Now the public is sometimes confused.
Because they have to make multiple payments to different entities.
They only have they pay for one kind of music for one music, and yet they have to pay for several layers of rights. Well, actually, the law does provide for these layers of rights. However, the government needs to step in order to be able to at least regulate the different groups that have come up, so that we will ensure that indeed they will work for the benefit of the copyright holders.
All right, for music, that's true. There's a composer behind it. There's the performer, the performing artist, and
There's
then the
a
writer,
phonogram producer,
the producer,
yes,
and then the broadcaster.
broadcasting organization.
But how about for literary works? I mean, who are the rights owners involved? In, for example, I have a poem.
Generally, whoever is the author of the work, the natural
The
person who
writer.
created the work,
The author.
he's the author. Now, if you're an employee, then if
How about the publisher?
well,
Do publishers
the-
have rights?
They do have rights, yes, especially when the author has already assigned the copyright to them.
Here's my work, you publish it.
That's
and
right,
then-
yes. And usually, publishers' contracts contains terms and conditions regarding the amount of reproduction that can be done, when the work will be reproduced, when the work will be distributed.
Is that a
regarding the rates of
practice
royalty.
among writers that you have contracts whenever you publish your work, or somebody asks permission to publish your work? Have you ever encountered it?
Rarely,
page.
parang
It's oral.
Yeah,
Yes,
rarely.
no.
Parang if people say,
Then you fax it back.
That's it.
There's a form. So, but I mean,
But I personally, I have not been. Nobody has come to me and said, "We're reproducing your poem in an anthology." It's not a usual practice to know your rights. Really, you're just happy if people use your poetry and use your short stories. You stop there.
but as writers, of course, you would like your works to be, I mean, reproduced. You'd love to share it for